There's something truly inspirational when a family turns a lifelong diagnosis into a call for action.
I remember the day that I got the phone call and, you know, that Carly had type 1 diabetes. I considered it my fault. And it was really, really hard on me. Because we asked all the questions, you know, when we were thinking about starting a family, we asked all the questions that we were worried about. You know, will our kids have a much greater chance of having to worry about developing diabetes? And what we were told at the time was that any children that we would have about a 7% chance of having diabetes, of contracting diabetes. So 93% chance that they would be fine.
Living with type 1 diabetes is hard. It's a lot different than other kids. If he didn't have diabetes, it would be a lot different because we'd have to, he wouldn't be there to teach me all this stuff.
We're gonna just make the best of this and fight it, and we're actually lucky.
Team Carly Rocks raises money for type 1 diabetes.
We're very proud of the way that she's handled having this chronic disease, and it's hard. I took the approach of handling this like my parents handled it and focused on the positive and what you can do with diabetes. And Carly had an idea that she wanted to try to send some kids to diabetes camp. She was 7 years old, and we were talking about our plans for the walkathon, and she said, "Daddy, can I swim the walk?" Like a light bulb went off, and I said, "Carly, would you like to do a separate event, like maybe a swim-a-thon?" And she went crazy. You know, she loves swimming. That's how the idea was born. Long story short, here we are. We have Team Carly Rocks Foundation, founded in 2016.
I'm here with Carly Lenett, who is this amazing superhero at all of 11 years old, who she is promoting awareness and raising money and fighting diabetes through fitness.
It's important for people to stay active, to stay in shape, and also especially for type 1 diabetics, just so they can keep their blood sugar down.
This year, Carly's swimming a 5K, and I will be trying to keep up with her. I love being involved with this because Carly is really showing everybody that it doesn't matter if you have diabetes, that you can do anything that you want to.
Her whole mission in this is to inspire other kids. Carly has grown up really understanding that nobody gets a free pass. You know, everybody is battling something. And ultimately, we are really doing what we do to try to create a world without diabetes.
It feels really good knowing that I'm the one raising all this money and doing what I love at the same time.
Joining us in the studio is Dr. Bankim Bhatt, Section Chief of Endocrinology at St. Luke's University Health Network. Thank you for being here, Doctor.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, what is the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes?
Mike, so there are a couple of differences between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes typically occurs in children. We do see it later in life, but most commonly it's in children. Whereas type 2 is typically the disease of the adults and typically occurs later in life. When you look at someone with type 1 diabetes, they're usually lean and fairly fit, whereas people with type 2 diabetes tend to have obesity as one of the problems that leads to the development of type 2 diabetes. And the other difference is in people with type 1 diabetes, they don't make any insulin, so you have to treat them with insulin. Whereas in people with type 2 diabetes, they make enough insulin, but their body can't react well enough to the insulin, so they're resistant to the insulin.
With type 1 diabetes, is there a chance that some of the children may outgrow that disease?
No, with type 1 diabetes, what actually happens is the cells that make the insulin are destroyed by their own body. So it's an autoimmune disease, and therefore the cells really don't recover or regenerate, and therefore they'll have it for life.
But with type 2 diabetes, you're doing a lot of great things, and of course, diet, exercise play a very important role.
With type 2 diabetes, that's actually the mainstay of therapy. The medications actually help, but without the diet and exercise, it becomes difficult to control the diabetes, and we have to keep adding on medicine. The other component is with type 2 diabetes, it's a progressive disease and it gets worse over time. Whereas with type 1, once you develop it, there's no progression, you have it.
What are some of the challenges that children with type 1 diabetes face as they grow up?
So children with type 1 diabetes actually face various difficulties from the time of diagnosis. So depending on what age they're diagnosed, if they're really young children, the challenge is actually for the parents recognizing that they have high blood sugar or low blood sugar and appropriately treating it.
We're hearing more and more every day about diabetes. It is now a national epidemic in the United States. What are some of the signs that people should be instantly aware of?
So people with type 1 diabetes will have a sudden onset of being thirsty a lot, urinating frequently. They may even develop blurry vision, and this may occur slowly at first, but then after a certain point, it happens all the time. So those are a couple of things that I look for. In children, things to look for is sometimes they stop growing in terms of height. They also may start complaining of bedwetting, especially in younger children.
Very important to note that diabetes is nothing to play around with. If you suspect that you have it and you have some of these warning signs, you would want to see a physician immediately.
That's correct. And seeing a physician earlier and getting a diagnosis early on actually prevents hospitalization and the person getting sicker. Remember, one of the problems with not having any insulin is there are a lot of things in the body that depend on the insulin to regulate the system. And if they go out of whack because of lack of insulin, you can get really sick really fast.
Dr. Bhatt, what is your final words of advice for people with type 1 or type 2 diabetes?
So for people with type 1, what I would recommend highly is controlling the blood sugars early on after the diagnosis of the disease and sort of being vigilant in controlling the disease to prevent the long-term complications. That can be said for type 2, but more importantly, for people with type 2, they're actually more lucky than people with type 1 diabetes because they can still make insulin. And controlling the disease, the mainstay is physical activity and diet. With those two things, the diabetes can be actually cured if you have type 2 diabetes. With weight loss, physical activity, and diet, there's a potential of getting off all of the medications and curing the disease, essentially.
That's excellent news. I thank you so much for being here, Dr. Bhatt.
Mike, thanks for having me here in the studio.
For more information on diabetes or any of today's topics, just go to our website, thepeaktv.com. Thanks for watching. Have a great week. And remember, every day is your chance to be your best self. This is The Peak.
Did you like our video? Be sure to subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up.